We begin our look at Soviet self-propelled artillery with the ISU-152, a heavy assault gun that entered service in late 1943. Nicknamed the Beast Killer, it was built on the chassis of the IS-2 heavy tank and carried a massive 152mm gun. Its main job was destroying thick concrete bunkers and heavily armored German tanks. The sheer explosive force of its shells meant it did not even need armor-piercing rounds to knock out enemy vehicles. It proved brutally effective in combat. Moving into the Cold War, Soviet strategy required highly mobile firepower for their airborne forces. The ISU-57 arrived in 1951 to fill this exact role. This vehicle was incredibly small and lightweight, built from aluminum to ensure it could be dropped from aircraft directly into the battlefield. It carried a 57mm gun to give paratroopers immediate anti-tank support. Though lightly armored and open-topped, its tiny size made it very hard to spot in the brush and dense forests. As tank armor grew thicker in the late 1950s, airborne troops needed something with a much bigger punch. The ISU-85 was introduced in 1959 to replace the smaller airborne guns. It featured a fully enclosed, sloped fighting compartment and a much more powerful 85mm main gun. While it was heavier and required larger transport planes, it finally gave paratroopers a fighting chance against modern tanks. It saw extensive use in early Cold War conflicts and remained reliable for years. By the early 1970s, the Soviet Army shifted focus toward fully enclosed, tracked howitzers to keep up with fast-moving tank divisions. The Tu-S3 Koalitsiya entered service in 1971, carrying a 152mm howitzer housed in a rotating turret. This gave crews far better protection from enemy fire and radiation compared to older towed artillery. The Koalitsiya was designed to lay down massive bombardments ahead of advancing troops and quickly relocate before the enemy could fire back at them. Following right behind the Koalitsiya, the Tu-S1 Gvozdika entered service in 1972 as a lighter, highly mobile artillery piece. Mounted on a modified multi-purpose tracked chassis, it carried a 122mm gun. What made the Gvozdika truly special was its amphibious capability. It could swim across rivers and lakes without needing specialized bridges, allowing artillery units to keep pace with rapid motorized infantry advances. It became one of the most widely exported Soviet artillery systems. Also entering service in 1972 was something much larger and far more destructive. The Tu-S4 Tulpan is a self-propelled heavy mortar, and it holds the record for being the largest of its kind in the world. It fires massive 240mm mortar bombs designed to obliterate heavily fortified buildings and deep bunkers. Because the ammunition is so heavy, it uses an external crane system to load the weapon. The blast radius and destructive power of a single round are absolutely terrifying. In 1976, the Soviet Army introduced the Tu-S5 Gyatsint-S to engage targets at extreme ranges. Unlike turreted models, this self-propelled gun has its 152mm weapon mounted externally on the rear of the hull. This open design allowed engineers to fit a much longer barrel, giving the Gyatsint-S incredible firing range and accuracy. Crews had to operate the gun from the outside, which reduced their protection, but the weapon's primary job was striking deep behind enemy front lines. The year 1976 also saw the debut of the Tu-S7 Pion, a colossal machine built to deliver tactical nuclear shells and high explosive rounds over vast distances. It carried a massive 203mm gun, making it one of the most powerful conventional artillery pieces ever built. The recoil of this weapon was so intense that an operator had to lower a large spade into the ground just to keep the vehicle from flipping backward. It was a true heavy hitter designed for high-value strategic targets. By 1981, the Soviet military realized they needed a versatile fire support vehicle for their elite airborne forces. The Tu-S9 Nona was the solution, combining the features of a howitzer and a mortar into a single 120mm weapon. Because it was based on an airborne personnel carrier chassis, it could be dropped from planes and float across rivers. It gave paratroopers the ability to fire directly at enemy armor or drop explosives over tall buildings during intense urban combat operations. As the Cold War neared its end, the Tu-S-19 MIST-S was introduced in 1989 to modernize the heavy artillery fleets. Built using components from the T-72 and T-80 main battle tanks, it provided excellent mobility and armor. Its long 152mm gun featured an automated loading mechanism, allowing the crew to fire rapidly and sustain heavy bombardments. It was designed to quickly set up, unleash devastating barrages, and drive away before counter-battery radar could locate its position. Following the collapse of the Soviet Union, development slowed, but the Tu-S-31 Vena eventually entered service in 2010. It took the hybrid gun mortar concept of the Nona and upgraded it with modern fire control systems and a much heavier armored chassis. Equipped with a 120mm gun, the Vena is capable of firing guided munitions with pinpoint accuracy. This highly automated system allows the crew to engage targets faster and more effectively, bridging the gap to the modern era of combat. Finally, we reach the absolute cutting edge of Russian self-propelled artillery with the Tu-S-35 Koalitsiya-SV, introduced in 2015. This machine represents a massive leap in automation. The crew sits inside an isolated armored capsule at the front, while the 152mm gun and turret operate entirely on their own. It boasts an incredibly fast firing rate and advanced satellite targeting systems. This vehicle showcases how far self-propelled artillery has evolved since the days of World War II.